Hey, buddy.
Very
I think so.
Yes. Ooh.
Hello and welcome to the Seahawkers podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Schultz, and I am joined by my good buddy and Montana Seahawker, Adam Emmert, as the Seahawks kick off the 2024 NFL season with a 26-20 victory over the stupid Denver Broncos. Adam, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, man, because it was a dub. Didn't know exactly what to expect after that first half, but team kind of pulled it together and got down the stretch and did the exact right things they needed to do in winning time, which was really exciting to see. And we got tons to talk about. I think the number one story today is the defense was borderline dominant, and we're still going to end up talking about the offense for the most part, I bet.
I think it can be a good mix of both. You say the defense is the story of the day. I say maybe Tyler Lockett is the story of the day, Adam, because it is Tyler's one-handed catch that helps seal the victory at the end of the game. And on top of that, he becomes the second Seahawk to receive for more than 8,000 yards and finishes the day as the leading wide receiver, 6 catches, 77 yards. And I feel like on a day where Tyler Lockett maybe was written off by fans a little bit. You know, a lot of conversation about DK Metcalf and JSN coming into this game. And yet it was Tyler Lockett is the hero of today's game.
Yeah, he made the game-winning catch, obviously, and it was cool to see the offense close the game after the defense gives up the late touchdown and kind of gives us another taste of the Pete Carroll era and having a little bit of stress going down the stretch. And it was just great to see them step up after the first half that they had. And, you know, you mentioned Tyler and everything that he was able to accomplish today. And yes, there was a lot of talk about DK and JSN, but here's the thing with all of those receivers is you never know whose days it's going to be. And so good luck if you're a betting person and you're trying to make prop bets on the receiving options for the Seahawks, because it is going to be difficult to predict which one it's going to be.
And if you're just now dropping in here on YouTube, hit the like button, hit subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. That way you can get notified whenever we do go live. Because on a day like today, you know, maybe we throw up a stream and then we decide to throw up a different stream because we misfire. And that way you'll get all those notifications. I've got a notification from Carly Perkins right here, a $9.99 super chat. Carly's coming in as live executive producer with the first super chat. Said, I had fun with this game, especially after the second half adjustments, but I can't think of a better ending than Lockett's clutch catch to finish the game. Lockett killed it and showed how clutch he is. One of our biggest resident Tyler Lockett fans with Carly.
Absolutely. I can imagine that gave her the fizz in ways that is almost indescribable. For me, it was K9 putting on a Superman cape in the second half and really taking this game and changing the entire dynamic of it.
Yeah, and that was the big shift, right? Going from the first half to going to the second half, because I felt like we saw so little of K9 in the first half, but I mean, we saw so little of the offense, except when they were backed up toward their end zone. I mean, there were so many, speaking of misfires, between the offense, between special teams. I mean, the defense, thankfully, was flying around to kick off the start of this game, or else it could have gotten real ugly in that first half.
It could have gotten real ugly real fast. And I think there was a comment up here talking about tackling. Let's find it. Yeah, I think from Nate here. Yeah, I think this is one of the biggest plot lines of today's action is just how ready the defense was in terms of their tackling ability and how quickly they were playing downhill in rallying to the short passes to the running backs and all of that stuff. So that was super exciting to see. Coach Mike lived up to the billing in this game. His defense looked like it was NFL ready right out the gate, and it was awesome to see.
Kenneth Walker, 20 carries, 103 yards, average 5.2 yards per carry, had a touchdown, should have had 2 touchdowns, but a ticky-tack holding call on DK Metcalf took that second touchdown off the board. Yes, okay, technically holding, but, you didn't need to call that, refs.
Maybe not. You're right, though. Ticky-tack. There's a couple calls like that throughout the game. Whatever with the calls. I thought it was relatively evenly officiated. Yeah, I couldn't be more excited about how fast the defense played. I mean, that really is what jumped off the screen to me. Pass rush looked good throughout the day. That whole group, the defensive line worked great in tandem. And really what made the pass rush go is that for the most part, they were great against the run and made the Broncos one-dimensional.
That was a big part of it. We got Charlie Malmberg in the chat saying, great tackling. Dotson was great. Tyrell Dotson, one of the pleasant surprises from the day. Of course, Julian Love led the team in tackles. He had 12 total, 10 solo, but right behind him, Tyrell Dotson.
Absolutely. The speed sideline to sideline, I thought really showed with the linebackers. With the Broncos, with a rookie quarterback who thrives in the short passing game, they're going to kind of try to stick in that short yardage area, and they were ready for it and really did defend that horizontal type offense very well.
We've got our Ryan 911 coming in with a $9.99 super chat. Our usual live executive producer, McDonald era game 1 is a win. Lots of work to do, but a solid start in the end. Yeah, it was a little bit iffy, but the way they turned it around in the second half was impressive.
You betcha. And look, the offense came out and they were running a lot of stuff out of gun, and they were trying to throw the ball quite a bit. And I imagine that it surprised Ryan Grubb just how poorly the offensive line was holding up early. And that really did kind of put them behind the 8 ball. 2 out of their first 3 drives, they got killed by penalties and then ended up getting backed up real deep on some really nice punt coverage by the Broncos. Now, with that said, when you're backed up in the end zone like that, don't try to sprint out left out of gun on the first go around and make it difficult for an offensive line that was having a hard time not holding and not false starting and just, I don't know, being a competent offensive line. That was tough to see. And then the second time around, running the football out of gun from the one with your second best running back. Like I couldn't understand that. And those two things that I saw a comment earlier, wanted to tear my TV off the wall is what they had mentioned. And look, those 2 plays right there, that definitely qualified for wanting to rip the TV off the wall there for a second.
Yeah, well, 2 plays that you can, and I know it was one thing that people were struggling with early on in saying, well, is this the offensive line fault or is it the fault of Ryan Grubb? And it's like, yeah, those 4 points are the fault of both those things, because one, you're making those calls with an offensive line that's not playing up to speed. I mean, shoot, George Fant barely lasted 3-4 drives in this game before you had to go to a backup right tackle. So that part of it stinks. And then, maybe not running out of shotgun when you're down on the 1 yard line. We've got JR with a $12 super chat. I'm not allowed to play on phone at dinner tables, so I'll sneak this in while no one is looking at me and watch later. Excited to see this game in person next week. Excited to see the game in person next week. JR going to be at the game. Adam, you and I going to be at the game out there in New England, in Boston, or Foxborough, or wherever they call the town that they play in. But looking forward to that too, man.
Absolutely. Yeah, hopefully we get together with JR, and that'll be a lot of fun. But this is a great way to start a season, because while some learning moments, I've seen a couple people here like Craig mentioning we decided to overlap each other with comments control here, Brandon, seeing him talk about the second half adjustments. And I think that's easily one of the things that stood out. In one of the things that as Seahawks fans, we were super frustrated with when it came to Pete Carroll and Shane Waldron. You're like, look, man, we need to get after this. And to hear Mike at the end of the first half in his sideline interview go, we need to start running the football. Like the second that came out of his mouth, I was like, oh, okay, this might just be all right as long as Grubb listens to him. Clearly he did, and they got things going. And it was cool to see that while they started out the game pass happy, they switched to the running game, and they had the type of stuff that really worked in the running game and got under center a bit more. And I think that helped quite a bit. And it helped the offensive line play downhill and aggressive, which is a big deal when your guys are struggling.
Well, watching the second half of football versus the first half of football, it shows you exactly why finesse football versus power football, it works better, because as soon as they started running and having success, it was all of those other elements of the passing game that then started to play off of, okay, they could get the offense moving to the left, and then, they could boot out and had some things open to the right. And you had Charbonnet, who had the open touchdown in the end zone that got the final touchdown of the day to put them up 26-13. And, once they put that Charbonnet touchdown up on the board, it was, it felt comfortable at that point.
It did. It felt like that the time was running out for the Broncos and that they weren't able to stretch the field vertically in a way that they were going to be able to score quickly and get themselves back into it. They did end up with a late touchdown on that really nice Bo Nix scramble. And he put poor Witherspoon in just a tough position because he had the tight end or the receiver right behind him. He's caught in no man's land. I'm sure that Coach Mike will say, just don't leave your feet, get your hands in the air if he pumps, and then you can still be in position to make the tackle. But it was a nice run by Nix, and all of it set up by the fact that they were able to convert on a fourth down there on that drive, which was a little frustrating, but the coverage was good, and it was just a nice play by the Broncos.
Carly Perkins in chat. We're number 1 in the NFC West. Yes, the Cardinals, they fall to the Buffalo Bills. The Seahawks get the win. They're 1-0. And the other stupid teams haven't played yet. So we can enjoy first place, hopefully through the week, but at least until the Rams play.
Absolutely. And yeah, just a fantastic start that way. Nice to get winning at home going, right? It felt like for the last couple of years, the home field advantage had waned a bit. And important to get out with the new staff and the new look and everything in front of the fans and give them something to get excited about.
You mentioned the Broncos and their kind of inability to run in this game. They finish with just 99 yards on the ground. Jaleel McLaughlin, 10 carries, 27 yards, so just 2.7 yards per carry. Javonte Williams, 2.9 yards per carry. And Bo Nix ends up being their leading rusher, 5 carries, 35 yards. And including 123-yarder. So overall on the day, if you would have given me that stat line, I would have been pretty happy with the defense.
Oh, 100%. And give the defense a lot of credit, too. They were put in some bad positions in the first half, whether that was Gino's really bad interception. Like, you just can't throw that. I don't know what he was thinking with the defender around his feet. Just dirt it or take the sack, but you can't just throw it directly to the linebacker. And then D. Williams having the muff punt as well, which really set the Broncos up in business. So to only give up 20 points when you give the Broncos that sort of field position in the first half, that's pretty impressive.
Right. Yeah. The fact that it started off only 3-0 on the field goal when it could have been so much worse. After the offense, Gino gets sacked the first play of the game, kind of goes down. And then trying not to get sacked on the second play of the game, throws that interception. And Jeremy Green in the chat saying you could really tell the starters on offense didn't get much preseason playing time. They didn't, although they looked so good in preseason game 3, it had us fooled that maybe they didn't need all that playing time in the preseason. But based on the first half of what we saw on offense, maybe it could have helped a little bit.
It could have helped. And then you have the other factor of offensive linemen don't really get to hit much in preseason throughout training camp. And that makes it really difficult for them to get up to speed with the physicality of the game. And then you compound that with the moving parts, whether that's Bradford or Haynes, or whether it was going to be Williams or Olu. And you got George Fant out there instead of Abe Lucas and all those moving parts. It's going to look rough out of the gate. And that is exactly what happened in the first half. And, it's one of those things where I'm sure a lot of people are wringing their hands and being like, oh my God, maybe Grubb really does stink. And it's like, wait a second. Okay. It's just one data point for half a game through week 1. And again, giving Grubb all the credit for the second half adjustments, it's still just one data point for one game. Let's see how it works out here over the course of this next year in the following year. And then we can kind of come to a conclusion, but some exciting stuff out of the gate in the second half for Grubb and the way that he was able to change his attack.
Yeah, we'll have to see what they're going to do in terms of adjustments going from this week to next week with, depending on how long we could see George Fant out. And it really had us nervous with Forsythe out there and no depth behind him. Jarrell was not active for this game. McClendon Curtis not active. So they were down to their final depth piece at right tackle. And you don't expect obviously to lose 2 right tackles in one game, but it's out of all the things that could have happened in this game, Adam, it with the offensive line, that was the worst potential outcome because, well, maybe there were worse things that could have happened, but
Sure.
I mean, it was one of our worries is that, okay, you in the offseason, you had the opportunity to maybe draft a right tackle. Instead, you draft a right guard. That right guard doesn't even start. He came in for a little bit after Edwards. There was the holding play that not Edward Bradford, a holding play where Bradford came out, but that looked like he was injured. But then he came back in. So, yeah, it's a little frustrating when you think of, okay, we had this high draft piece that we could have spent on the offensive line, and we went with guard instead of
which is offensive line.
Well, a tackle. Going with guard instead of tackle.
Okay. All right. Well, look, you're hoping that Abe Lucas is going to make it back. They seem to think that he was going to get back by week 1. It didn't happen. And so with that in mind, they go out and they get George Fant, who has been serviceable and fairly durable over the last couple of years for the Texans and Jets and the other teams that he's been on. So I'm more comfortable with somebody, say, like George Fant with a little bit of experience than a potential 3rd round rookie to come in and be that.
Yeah. Well, there are a bunch of different data points that we did get just from this offense. We got to see how the offensive line was shaping up after those preseason moves. The other thing that we got to see is that we got to see Ryan Grubb, how he managed his offense in a couple different situations, which we talked about obviously being on the goal line, but then we got to see in the 2-minute offense, he had a decision to make there on 3rd down after when it was 3rd and 6, whether or not to potentially run and keep the clock going and punt it back. Now, maybe that was more of a Mike McDonald decision at that point, I suppose, but throwing the football there in the final minutes and trying to pick up that 1st down to close it out on offense rather than put the defense back out on the field.
Sure. I guess it all depends on whether or not you feel like that's 4-down territory to close out the game. Because if it is, maybe you run it there, but they wanted to end it right there, and they dialed up the correct number, which is 16, and the guy who does make all of the most clutch catches in the most clutch moments. And it was awesome.
Rudy Grayling in the chat, thoughts on Connor Williams, played pretty well and a really bad offensive line performance. Yeah, I didn't notice too much negative coming from Williams. It was more of the right side of the offensive line that I saw most of the negative plays coming from.
Right. And I'm excited to go back and rewatch and look at Connor Williams specifically and just kind of see how it looked for him. Really, it's kind of the trenches as a whole is really where I end up focusing on a rewatch, because you're watching the perimeter a lot when the game is ongoing. And I really want to go back and watch Byron Murphy and Leonard Williams, because Leo had a huge game.
Leo had a nice game, and yeah, I saw some plays here and there. It's a little bit of flashing from Murphy, but no big splash plays. And a part of that was it was one of the things that I think we expected, right? That Bo Nix would be able to escape a little bit of pressure, and so where you wouldn't necessarily get the sacks, but we saw him throw a couple interceptions. Julian Love getting the interception, which came at a really bad part of the field, to where you were wondering, oh, is it really that great that he took points off the board for the I mean, yes, ultimately, but the way that it ended up playing out, it didn't play out that great, because they take the safety, they got to kick the ball away, and then I think the Broncos got another 3 points right after that. So it went from a potential of a touchdown to still giving up 5 points off of that.
Right. Yeah. Look, Julian Love and Jenkins both had a very nice game, and coming into this game and all through the offseason, as Seahawks fans, we were all wringing our hands about linebacker and safety. Linebackers, I thought, played a nice game, and I think the safeties played excellent. I mean, Julian Love shown why they paid him that money this offseason.
Nate Schutz saying, I didn't realize we got 2 sacks. And Ryan pointing out, Derek Hall had a sack. It was Boyamafe, which wasn't really a sack because Bo Nix just decided to run out of bounds. But Mafe got the credit for it.
Yeah, their O-line coach is going to be pissed at Bo Nix because he took 2 sacks by just running out of bounds instead of throwing the ball away.
Yeah, one was right real close to the line too. So yeah. maybe one of them didn't count actually. But yeah, you never want to sack yourself by running out of bounds.
No. That's a rookie play and expected from Bo Nix. I thought, I heard Archuleta talking about him during the broadcast and being like, oh, it's been a ragged day and all that. Did he make mistakes? Sure. Did he make some good plays too? Yes. I mean, it was a rookie debut in maybe one of the most difficult situations, in all the league, and having to deal with Witherspoon and then Riq Woolen, who ends up with the pick.
Yes. And we got Dolph Hawk 93 in the chat saying Woolen is back. And yeah, it was nice to see Woolen get that pick at the end of the game. Just 3 tackles on the day, so they weren't going his direction too much. He gets the INT. And the reason why it made it so difficult on Bo Nix, we can go back to that run game again. Outside of Nix, the backs having 64 yards. And yeah, if you're doing that, shutting down the run game, credit to Mike McDonald's defense and making the rookie and having to go with a lot of short throws, and they played those short throws well.
100%. And look, that was something we talked about in our pregame show, is just what do you do defensively against this? And I said these would be the games that drive me nuts under Pete Carroll, because he'd be so just concerned with getting beat over the top and didn't have his guys playing tight coverage and playing downhill. And Mike McDonald does not suffer from that same philosophy. Other thing I loved about what Mike did down the stretch. Now, it didn't work out in this game on that last drive, but he wasn't in a prevent. He was bringing dudes. He was bringing pressure and allowing his stars to go out there and try to win the game. One of those stars in this game was Riq. Am I still done with Riq, Ryan? Look, this was a nice game. It's one data point in a whole season. We have one great year out of Riq. We got one good year in coverage out of Riq. And then the same year, a really poor performance in tackling. So let's see how it works out for him going down the stretch. But early returns, yeah, they look nice.
And I know I've seen here in the chat a little bit of concern around Ken Walker because he wasn't in the game to help close it out. And Gambling Goat saying Walker said he was fine. I've seen it from a couple folks saying that in the post-game interview, Ken Walker saying that after the game he was fine. So that's some good news right there.
It is some good news. And I imagine that they had Sharps in there at that point, mainly just for pass protection and trying to help out the offensive line and just trying to pound the rock and just take some time off the clock. And also too, after seeing K9 today, do I want 17 games of K9? Yes, please. I'd like that. So if in situations like that, when you're up and you can take some of that wear and tear off of K9 to save him for a little bit later in the season, I'm in for it.
Jeremy Green referencing, I think, the point in the game where he went WWE on one of the Broncos defenders. And then unfortunately it was Browning who was able to get the reverse pin on K9 after he flipped him over his back. But we got to see a little bit of athleticism, and in addition to some great runs, he got to show off some of his strength too.
Baron Browning is not a small dude, and Kenneth Walker really did just give him the flipperooski there. It was that was fun to watch, man. I mean, K9 was electric all day. I mean, he just looks like he has a different gear than everybody else out there trying to chase him down.
Bro Dude says, what's going on with Metcalf back injury? Looked like he was hobbling. Yeah, he came off the field, but I think he was back on the field after that. So I think, maybe it was one of those things where it shook him up a little bit, but I think he was back out there and okay after that injury.
Yeah, he was back out there. What's up with the back injury? If it's more than just like a ouch, that hurt for a minute, or if it's, something ongoing, we have no idea, man. Like, it's not like the doctors call us up after the game and give us an injury update. So, Mr. Dude, your guess is as good as mine.
Anybody else we want to call out on the Seahawks offensively, defensively? I mean, in terms of receiving, I guess I didn't expect Vele to be one of their top receivers. Josh Reynolds, 5 catches, 45 yards. He had a nice catch of 25 yards down the sideline. Trey Brown still in pretty good coverage, but nice back shoulder throw that helped put them into scoring position on one of their drives. Cortland Sutton finished the day, 4 catches, 38 yards. So, but yeah, just those 3 guys and all under 50 yards.
All under 50 yards. And I was stunned to see Josh Reynolds make clutch catches down the stretch there. Didn't matter in the end because the Broncos still lose. And that always feels really good.
See, we've got folks in chat. Thanks for everybody joining us today. Over 220 people here in chat. Hit the like button. If you're new to the show here, hit the subscribe button. We're going to be doing this all throughout the season. So Jake Bobo, no catches, but as Sojin says in the chat, Bobo had some nice blocks. We did see him out there blocking on the offensive line, and that's fine. I know everybody wants Bobo to be more involved in the offense on a day like today. This was a game we wanted to see the run game featured, and Bobo he can be a good blocker.
And not only that, but did Gino really ever have time to get to a third read or even a second read? I mean, he was under duress. He took so many hits, and after watching a full morning slate of football, that was easily the worst O-line performance I had seen all day. And I imagine Scott Huff is going to be frustrated when they go back to look at the tape here this week.
Derek Williamson says, Brandon, is it still a 2+ game evaluation for the Hawks offseason progress? I'm going to give it, because it wasn't stellar, I'm going to give it a few more games. It was only a 2-game evaluation, I think, if it was awesome, and then we could crown them. It wasn't completely awesome, so I think I still have to go with a little bit longer observation time.
It has to be at least 6 games. I mean, just think about.
I know you keep saying that, but if it's so awesome that I can crown them early, I'm not going to wait 6 games.
Yeah, you're just going to be an early adopter and risk being wrong for no reason.
Yeah, why not?
Okay, it's free country, man. You can do you.
Got Clinton in the chat. How about our next week opponent getting a win today too? Interesting. The New England Patriots getting the win over the Cincinnati Bengals, and the Bengals hurt themselves in a lot of ways in that game, but the Patriots actually they could cause some problems. I think if people are overlooking them, they were pretty solid in the trenches today against the Bengals.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Again, week 1. I know my daughter's probably pretty angry at me because she texted me her survival pool from work and said, who should I pick? And I said, oh yeah, pick the Bengals. The Patriots are terrible. And the Bengals fell to the week 1 weirdness. And because there's always 3, 4, 5 games that are just really bizarre. Like, for example, the Cards getting out early on the Bills.
Oh yeah.
Just little things like that.
I would have told her to pick the Bills rather than the Bengals. I think that's on you.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that'd have been a fine choice too. It didn't seem like a terrible one. That's for sure.
Simon Curtis in the chat saying our offense might be shaky, but at least we're not the Giants.
Yeah. Good point.
Hey, we got a good half of offense. Yes, the first half was bad, and I don't think anybody's going to sugarcoat that first half of Seahawks offense and say it was anything but bad. At least I hope they don't. But yeah, the second half, much better.
Much better. And it just goes to show that you can't set up the run with the pass. You can't wait to get to your running stuff. You just need to get to your running stuff and hand it to one of the most electric players in football in K9. And it was really cool to see K9 pay off a lot of fantasy people, because I know he got a lot of love this year and everybody's really excited about it. And I was like, I don't know. I don't know that I would get too excited about it until I see this offense for a while, because I just don't know which way Grubb's going to go.
Yeah, he made me look better too, because I've been telling people all off season that, yeah, maybe people are sleeping on Ken Walker as a potential fantasy running back. And then he goes out there, has a 100-yard day, has a touchdown, should have had 2, but that's fine. Anything else you want to hit on before we get on out of here, Adam?
I think that's about what I got for initial impressions right after a game, and just being excited for football being back. being 1-0, watching Coach Mike take the bull by the horns at halftime and say, no, we need to run the football. We need to get after it, and have his defense show out that the way that it did. All of that is super encouraging going into week 2 when we get to watch this team live in Foxborough.
Can't wait to get out there and get out with our folks in the flock. It's going to be a fun time. The Seahawks, they come away. They are 1-0 after week 1, the 26-20 victory over the Denver Broncos. Broncos, they're starting out the gate slow. We are starting out fast. We're going to roll on through week 2, Adam.
Absolutely. And if you guys aren't aware, if you're new to the show, we do 5 different shows a week, including some of the most unique recaps and preview shows that you will find anywhere on the YouTubes involving the Seahawks. So be sure to like and subscribe if that's your fancy. If not, just check out the shows. I think you're going to enjoy them.
Anyone checking in on Perna, says Stu. Yeah, I actually did. I checked in on Perna with when the Seahawks were up 26-13, and he's fine. He's doing fine. That's and he has nothing to be too worried about. I think that Broncos fans were coming into this game expecting not a whole lot, and they got to see what the Seahawks defense is going to be about.
Absolutely. I'm super thrilled to have helped the Broncos on their way to a losing season. That felt nice.
And I think with that,
there's only one thing left to say.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.